Dear friends of soccer, wine and education, dear conference participants, ladies and gentlemen. I am very pleased to welcome you to the first expert conference of the UENFW, the Union of European National Football Teams of Winemakers. As president, I represent my colleagues from 8 European wine-growing nations. The fact that we are able to initiate the conference today through our passion playing soccer makes us, my colleagues from the board, but also more than 250 licensed players, incredibly proud. For us, wine and soccer are valuable cultural assets. In addition to enjoyment and exercise, a great deal of knowledge is also required to be able to present high-class products. In soccer, game tactics such as four-man backfield and physical basics are important. In wine, there are an unbelievable number of individual parameters that we have to exchange among expert colleagues in order to be able to offer our customers an excellent wine. We are very pleased that we have been able to gain a top-class partner in the OIV, which is very supportive of our plans to present wine through the shared spirit of soccer. We are very grateful to have received the patronage for this conference, and we are looking forward to the greetings of the General Director Paul Rocker afterwards. His statement, "We need to focus on the cultural way of understanding wine consumption," has become our guiding principle. When the German and Italian teams started their first international match in 2007, we could not have imagined that in 2021 we would hold an European Wine Conference as an event. It all started with the friendship among our European members, with the common passion of soccer and the exchange in wine and pleasure. The corona pandemic has shown us very clearly, but also very painfully in the last 16 months, how important it is to maintain personal contacts and what a great asset personal exchange and free travel are. Our hybrid conference today, like the New Year's video conference, is a sign that we stand together and seek our exchange with each other. I'm sure that the next conference will be held in the framework of the Vino Euro Czech Republic in presence. We founded the UENFW in 2018 in Slovenia with 8 nations. At that time, when I was elected founding president, I said, "Wine is a cultural asset of immeasurable value to the humanity. Peoples and religions around the world value the interconnected elements of cultivation, production and enjoyment. We want to go out in the world as ambassadors of wine and football." We are already a little closer to this great goal, also thanks to the support of the OIV, the participating educational institutes, the universities, the national associations with your boards and players and our sponsors and supporters as well. And of course, with the hosting of this conference. Thank you to all who are helping to achieve our goal with passion and hard work. So, hosting this conference is an example of European cooperation. We are broadcasting live from Geisenheim University today, but the presentations came from all countries and was edited especially by Martin Slat and his team in the Czech Republic. Thank you very much for the great collaboration. We are 8 nations at the moment, and the OIV is helping us to get the significant winemaking nations France and Spain as teams. Also, Romania is in planning preparations for Konstantin Zoltan, a Geisenheim student. We are also thinking of going to South America as wine and soccer ambassadors, because soccer connects all over the world. Our friends, the Doctors' national teams, have been playing a world championship for years. But it's not all easy, especially since much of the work has to be done on a voluntary basis. The national federations form the healthy basis for the European success. There the main work is done and I would like to thank for it and at the same time call here not to be tired in our cause to remain active. Especially after the terrible corona pandemic, we have to stand up again. When I think back to how the Swiss team was founded in Hungary in the Parliament's building in Budapest with a view of the Danube as well as the impressive chain bridge, I still got goosebumps today. That was a great moment in our development. Unfortunately, no presentation was submitted by our friends from Hungary and the communication was very reserved. Our friendly offer to an intensive involvement still exists. We are looking forward to an active European Hungary and a German team to a timely friendly match. Now I am looking forward to our professional exchange, to intensive questions in our online chats, which will all be answered by our colleagues. The moderation through the conference will be done by our Swiss colleague Martin Wiederkehr. I hereby open the first UENFW expert conference and hand over to our wonderful speakers of greetings. Please, the stage is yours.
Ja, liebe Freunde des Fußballs und des Weins, ich freue mich, euch ganz herzlich zu dieser Konferenz der Union of European National Football Teams of Winemakers begrüßen zu dürfen. Wenn ich mich an das Jahr 2007 zurückerinnere, als Luigi und ich darüber gesprochen haben, ob es nicht sinnvoll wäre, einmal Fußball zwischen verschiedenen Weinregionen auszutragen. Damals dachten wir an Toskana und den Rheingau. Und dann im Jahr 2008 das erste Spiel der deutschen Weinelf gegen die Mannschaft aus der Toskana stattgefunden hat. Auch damals stand schon im Mittelpunkt der Fußball, der Wein, aber auch der Genuss. Und wenn sich dann daraus eine Europameisterschaft entwickelt hat, wo zwischenzeitlich die Länder Österreich, Ungarn, Portugal, Slowenien, die Schweiz, Tschechien hinzugekommen sind, dann glaube ich, haben wir nicht nur hervorragende Europameisterschaften erlebt, sondern hoffen auch, dass wir noch die Weinregionen Spanien und Frankreich hinzugewinnen können. Aber dann kam auch die Idee, sozusagen da Wein ein Kulturgut ist, ein drittes Standbein, wenn ich so sagen darf, zu entwickeln, nämlich das Thema Bildung. Wir haben in unseren Regionen hervorragende Bildungseinrichtungen und so haben wir dieses Konzept auch der Europäischen Kommission vorgetragen in Brüssel und es hat dort großen Anklang gefunden. Und eine besondere Wertschätzung ist auch, dass jetzt die OEV sozusagen uns entsprechend unterstützt und wir diese Konferenz durchführen können, wo ein Austausch im Bereich der europäischen Bildung für das Kulturgut Wein stattfindet. Aber gerade die internationale Organisation von Reben und Wein ist eine besondere Auszeichnung. Und deshalb freue ich mich umso mehr, jetzt das Wort an den Generaldirektor der OEV, Herrn Paul Rocker, übergeben zu können.
Thank you. I think it's my turn, and I am in live from Paris, and I would like to give my salute to all of you, and especially to Robert Lohnartz, the president of the Union of European Football Winemakers. And I think it's an excellent initiative. And that is why we are very supportive from OIV to be your, in a way, your partner in this giving the patronage. It's a recognition, an official recognition from the OIV of your important role and the important role that you play and you may play in the future. This is very important. I think you're small now, but you can be very big in the future. This is important for wine. And since we are very supportive of your plans and that we share the spirit of soccer, that's why we gave the patronage. And I am at this moment, maybe it's interesting to see and to have a small review on what has happened this last year with coronavirus. This has been a crisis. It has been a crisis for all activities. It has been a crisis for football, for games. You know, we haven't had this. In the beginning, there is no attendance. Economically, it's also a problem for the activity of professional football. So it has a very bad impact. But also in wine, as you know, and as winemakers, probably you have the same type of sensations. But like in every crisis, this is in perspective. There is a crisis is a challenge and an opportunity. And I think this is one crisis of a series of crises that we will have. Maybe not virus, but the big crisis that we are going to have still is not here. It's climate change. And this is something that winemakers have been knowing and feeling, and we have never been on denial. Never. Winemakers have always resented this change, sometimes in their favor and sometimes in their disadvantage. But there is a change. And this needs to be also an alert that we have to change probably the global economy in a way that we work for sustainability. And the strategic plan of the OIV is mainly on sustainability, social sustainability, economic sustainability, and environmental sustainability. And in social sustainability, since we have as a product that comes from a territory and the links are so strong with the territory, we have this a big asset of being capable of presenting a model or a paradigm of adaptation to the problem of sustainability and adapting to the climate change. So this is the main work of the OIV, to make resolutions, to make standards, but on the side of sustainability. The other aspect that I think it's very important is that we have a very intolerant, in some places, intolerant way of understanding our culture, or how to adapt wine to different cultural aspects. And here soccer plays a big role also. I heard from your president saying that the cultural way of understanding wine consumption has become our guiding principle. And that's something that I claim very much. I think that going out of this crisis is looking at new markets for wine. And new markets probably are going to be mainly in Asia, Our own markets, it's very important, our internal markets, but also exports. And Asia, it's a new place for increase of wine consumption. But there we have to go with different cultural drivers. And it is important to focus on Asia as an objective. We have to look that there are many countries with different cultural aspects, with different cultural backgrounds, like Japan, like China, like the Southeast Asia, but where there is no limitations in terms of religion. So there is a place for wine consumption. And probably the exhibition of Osaka 2025 will be a big opportunity to have a wine pavilion. And I would like that you participate in that activity because it's going to be a 6 months programming of the activity. And probably we will have to export also the notion of soccer and wine outside of Europe. So at this moment, we are very working a lot in the area of digitalization as well, because we think it's an accelerator of all these economic model that we represent. The wine sector is very resilient, and this is very good for our capacities to adapt. You as winemakers represent also this, and the team building that football represents and the model that football, the soccer players are representing, and the team building system, it's very good for also an example of for going out of the crisis. We have all these anti-alcohol policies. This is something that it is very preoccupying in our side, but also we are going to counteract this with demonstrating that we have a specific behavior, that we have a good behavior, that conduct, it's important, that the way that drinking, it's very important. And this is also a model in football. When you go to soccer, there is a behavior, there is some ethics. And this is something that we have to promote. And there, the anti-alcohol policies, we can only say that we have a cultural product. It's not a consumption product. It's not something like food. It's a cultural product, and culture has a behavior and a model of consumption also. So we have many things in common. Wine and football are things that are cultural, and you have found a very strong link, and we have to promote this way of understanding the way of humankind behaves. And also it is important in terms of climate change, because we have a terroir which we cannot change. This is the soil, this is the environment, the climate change that we cannot change, but there is a human factor. And this human factor, which has to do also with the varieties that we plant, with the way that we manage the conduction, the way that we prune our vines, this behavior of man in the vine reflects how we can do a magnificent product, which is wine. And I think this is also something that we have to reflect. So congratulations, go ahead, increase your membership, and you're going to have always the support of myself and of the OIV. Thank you, Robert.
On the part of Messe Stuttgart and our interviewers, we are pleased to be partner of the Expert Conference 2021. Looking back, I'm really proud to have been able to be part of this development for years. 5 years ago, we were allowed to present ourselves for the first time as partner of UENFW Deutschland. In the meantime, this project has become an association of 8 nations which successfully use the international network to advance the transfer of knowledge. We are really happy to be part of the future as a partner of the UENFW and wish all participants a successful conference. Be our guest when the international wine industry meets in April 2022 for Intervitis. Many greetings from Stuttgart and a good day.
Dear Mr. President, dear colleagues, the world is changing every day, and I'm pleased to be the first speaker to give you a prelude of today's theme. Well, we are gathered here today to compare the damage caused over the last 18 months. This damage is certainly similar all over in Europe, and yet I am sure that each country will show a different facet. The facets are certainly as rich as the wine that is produced in these countries, because the cultural asset of wine has its place in where, how, and by whom it is produced. And that is a good thing. Allow me now to broadly define the focus to set the mood for the topic. In the last 18 months, I have had a lot of time, like all of you I assume, to look back over the last 30 years of viticultural development and winemaking. The picture has changed incredibly since my first vintage in 1982, and I have become aware of how diverse, how colorful, but also how complex the world of wine presents itself today, and how strong the changes in this industry have been in the last almost 40 years. Many of these changes are due to changing consumption style. Over the values of consumers change, so that the values of the baby boomer generations are no longer represented in Generation Y. These changes occur simultaneously with changes in behavior, which very much affect consumption patterns. Today, consumers have a greater influence on production, methods, and wine style than ever before. The world is also shifting. According to the UN, the challenges of today's world are linked to the following sub-areas. They are considered the guiding principles for sustainable coexistence in the world. Resources should be distributed as fairly as possible throughout the world. This goal has existed for several decades and is named after the principle that no human being should starve. The sustainable and thus climate-related development of the Earth is nothing more than an attempt to keep our planet in balance. We all know that long-term developments in the field of climate give rise to great debate. It is not wrong to speak about climate change. However, it is also important to keep a sense of proportion and to write about changes without political calculations or polemics. Science adds an extremely important element here. Science must try to put the collected data into a large context and evaluate facts. Only the facts strung together will help us to describe the changes in such a way that they are not misused. This Congress will help to gather facts from 8 European countries and make them available to our friends and spark a discussion. COVID-19 has separated us physically and brought us together digitally. We want to continue to work on this. And we want to work within a peaceful and open environment. Despite the fact that the media no longer focuses on physical conflicts and war, they remain present, often from a distance, as we are all know now, by unpiloted drones. Additionally, we have also a rise in trade wars and protectionism over one country's, which prevents global trade without tariffs. It is therefore also a matter of becoming closer and dismantling the walls between countries and people. Free and democratically run countries do not need walls, be it literally or through tariffs. So, we are talking about a shift in consumer patterns and a shift in our relationship with the world and each other. Finally, from all these considerations, I believe there will be 3 megatrends over the next 20 years. Sustainability is a word that needs more intensive attention. The interplay of ecological, economic and social conditions has long been regarded as a magic formula for the successful management of a company. Now, sustainable is nothing new, but has been given different adjectives depending on the decade. Let's not fool ourselves. If you want a return of more than 10 or 12% in a company, when the growth of the national economy is 4 or 5, then one of the other factors suffers. Every entrepreneur knows this from his own experience. It is about the economy of scale, about cheap credit, about productivity, and about market displacement. Every product is subject to different stages in a long-term cycle, and depending on where we are in the cycle, we act differently, but we need to act in a positive and successful way. Welfare is an incredibly important point to prevent wars. States with a good education system, an intact labor market, and a good state structure will have a happier people. This cycle is important to the next generation, who will inherit from their parents. Prosperity gives people more disposable income, which they can use on things they want and not only what they need. Security is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, we want to experience something, and on the other hand, we want security that nothing will happen to us. On the worry barometer of all European countries, poverty in old age, the loss of a job, or the loss of a person is always associated with pain. This pain is omnipresent, and not everyone always has the same opportunities in life. That is why security is a word of the megatrend and transferable of the whole universe. Based on these challenges on the world, the following problems areas with opportunities and trends can be seen. First of all, sustainable wine, vegan, organic, close to nature, and or with new varieties are certainly a mid-term trend. Wines produced close to nature and sustainable. Second part, communication with customers on the part of associations and entrepreneurs must be massively improved. The alienation of society and agriculture will otherwise continue. Intensification of professional communication in the agriculture environment means brands are becoming more important. We need a mission and a clearly formulated goal with a plan of action. Collaboration between producers will be indispensable for smaller and medium-sized farms. That means we need to search for possibilities to save costs in production and enology. And an intensive expansion of further training or new training programs in agriculture oriented and driven to the market is of extraordinary importance. New offers for viticulture and agriculture in the area of marketing and sales. Well, wine has a subtle complex structure that changes his habit completely after 1 or 2 microbiological processes. This changes or has changed your and our life. the wine also is an ideal partner for communication and our social life. Today, let us surprise what this unstructured environment has brought to us during the pandemic. I hope you all enjoyed the different presentations, and I'm looking forward to the exchange with all participants. Enjoy it.
Hello, dear listeners. A wonderful good day and a warm welcome to the first UENFW Expert Congress. My name is Martin, and I will be accompanying you all throughout the day. First of all, I'd like to give my best regards and thanks also to Robert Leonards, to Franz Josef Jung, to Pau Rocca, and also to Sebastian for her speeches to start. Thank you very much. It is always very inspiring. What are you talking about? And it's very important. And we saw also how the importance will rise for all our football and wine lovers. Thank you very much. For that, we are now going throughout the first country, two speeches from a small country, from Slovenia, which was very successfully in the past years in terms of our European football championships. Slovenia with Danilo Stajer, which is the president, and Janez Waldhuber. Enjoy the presentations.
Dear wine and football friends, I am Danilo Stajer, the president of the Slovenian wine national team and vice president of Union of European National Football Teams of Winemakers. I am happy that today we are starting a new story about the national wine teams of Europe. We will better our meetings and cooperation with professional content that will help improve European viticulture. Slovenian national wine team was founded in 2008, and in 2010 we attended the first international meeting of wine teams in Italy, as we felt that it would be a great chance for the winemakers to prove themselves as good athletes and ambassadors of Slovenian wine. Being a winemaker is not just a profession, it is a way of life that often takes a lot of physical and mental effort. The current global crisis has also affected Slovenian winemakers, mostly the family estates, which depend and sells in caterings and tourism. The idea of Union of European National Football Teams of Winemakers is that it can help us overcome these efforts, including the outcome the global pandemic has and will bring.
Hello, dober dan, guten Tag. My name is Janez Waldhuber, University of Maribor, Faculty of Agriculture and Life Science. I would like to present you the topic about impact of climate change on the viticulture in Slovenia. First, maybe we look at the geographical position of Slovenia. We can see our position is between Adriatic Sea on the west, southwest, Pannonical Plain on the east and east-north, and Alps from the north, and all these factors influence the climatic parameters in our country. If we go closer on the next slide, we can see that we have on the north and the northwest we have a alpine region there are no vineyards. Vineyards are especially spread in the eastern part, southeastern part, and western part of Slovenia, where small hills are in the landscape, good insulated. Mostly we don't find vineyards in the plain, in the flat regions, because of the late spring frost. So we have 3 wine growing regions. In the west, Primorska, coastal region, which is more hot, more warm. Then southeast Posavje, and in eastern part of Slovenia, Podravje wine growing region, which have more continental climate. If we look at the system of vineyards, mostly we can find in our country vineyards with vertical system of the rows, which use better the surface. And on the other hand, we have also a lot of terraces, especially in the western part of Slovenia, where is more warm, more dry climate. And because of that, the terrace allows to preserve the rainfall during the summer, and we can avoid the soil erosion, because the soil is also cultivated between the rows during the vegetation period. In the eastern part of Slovenia, Podravje region, we can also find some terraces, but they're mostly predominant vertical system. And the terraces are also in some parts of the eastern part of the region, in the eastern part of Slovenia, because of the very steep slope hills, and these terraces allows then the use of tractors and special mechanization for making labors in vineyard. If we look at the numbers about terraces, we can see in whole Slovenia we have about 1/3 of terraces and 2/3 of the surface in vertical system. And if we look at the wine growing regions, in Primorska wine growing region, in the west part of Slovenia, there are a lot of terraces, about 1/2 of the surface area. Mostly we don't find vineyards in the flat, in valleys, only in the coastal region, near to the sea. There are some vineyards really in the flat, in the valley or in lower parts, because there is no problem with some extreme temperatures during the winter or in the spring. On the other hand, we have mostly very steep slopes, vineyards. We still can use special tractors for doing labors in vineyard. So if we look at the figures about slopes, inclinations, we can see in this graph that about 70% of our surface of vineyard, we have an inclination over 15% degree. In general, we have about 16,000 hectares of the wine growing area, and a lot of small wine growers which are predominating type of the structure. So as you see in this picture that is in the southeast part of Slovenia, a lot of small wine growers with 0.2, 0.5 hectare of production, and they sell grapes to bigger wine cellars. So if you look at grape varieties, because of very different climate conditions, we have a quite wide range of grape varieties, predominating white grapes with Lashke Riesling, Rhine Riesling, Sauvignon Blanc, Muscat Blanc, and Gewürztraminer and so on, Rebula. And on the other hand, in the western part of Slovenia and some also in the southern part of Slovenia, we have some red grape varieties like Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Jametauka, Refosk, and so on. Regarding the management, soil management, in south and eastern part of Slovenia, predominating system is durable, long-time green covering system. And in the western part of Slovenia, where more terraces existing, we have the soil management with cultivation during the vegetation period, avoiding concurrence of the new plants, green plants to the grapevine. So now to the figures about climate changes during last 30-35 years. In this graph, we can see the precipitations in two periods. Period with blue column is 1995-1979, and the orange columns are 1980 to 2014. And we can see that not much big change we can find in precipitation or rainfall numbers. So also these figures are showing us, maybe in comparison to other countries, we have a quite good quantity of rainfall during vegetation period, between 700 and 900 millimeters per year in vegetation period. What is interesting here is that in the western part, in Primorska wine growing region, we can find bigger numbers of rainfall, but still there is more problem with drought during the summer, because in July and August there is very low rainfall quantity in comparison to other two wine growing regions. Next picture showing us the typical picture of the winter during the period before 34 years. So there was we used to have a lot of snow in those times, every year, every winter, and nowadays it's quite rare to see such picture, and that's why also we have now maybe more problems, because without snow the soil is warming up more quickly, and in spring the growth start is too quickly at the moment. So this picture we observed in the last few years more often, 2016, 2017, also this year, some areas were damaged by late spring frost because of too early start of the growing period of grapevines. Next climatic parameter is very maybe interesting, that the number of days over 30 degrees Celsius. Blue column, previous period 30-40 years ago, and the orange column last 30 years. And we can see a big change in these very hot days, that means days over 30 degrees Celsius. So this increase was much more important in Podravje and Posavje, that means eastern part, and southeast part, that means more continental climate, is much bigger increase than in western part, where still before we had more warmer conditions. So problems with hot weather stress for grapevines. Then average temperature in vegetation period. In general, in Slovenia as general, we have an increase in last 30 years for about 1.7 degrees Celsius. And also you see the figures for specific wine growing regions between 1.5 and 2 degrees Celsius is that increase, which means is warming up the climate. And the graphs are showing us big consequence, important consequence, because of a more warmer climate. We have a more early harvest dates. So we have here two trend lines. The upper trend line is about harvesting date for Sauvignon Blanc in eastern part of Slovenia. And that shows us that in last 30 years, the harvest date, expected harvest date, is 30 days earlier, 1 month earlier for this specific grape variety. And lower trend line is concerning the acidity in grape juice, and expected grape juice acidity nowadays is about 3 grams per liter lower than 30 years ago. So if we resume these impacts on Slovenian viticulture in comparison with previous more cold periods, we can say that in some years we have more water stress, especially in high summer, July and August, especially in western part of Slovenia, is more problem than in eastern and southeast part. In some varieties, we have a lack of acidity in warm years, like Muscato Tonel, Gewürztraminer. We have more problems with diseases and insects. Sometimes, especially in southeast and eastern part of Slovenia, we made a lot of noble botrytis wine or ice wine. Today is much more difficult to get such wines because it's too warm in the full maturity period of grapes. We have more risk today with spring frost. Expected harvest date is 3 to 4 weeks earlier in last 30 years. But on the other hand, the majority of grape varieties are easier to get full maturity, and that is okay for us. So red wines today, they have better tannic structure as before, and white wines, many of them have positive changes in sensory profiles. For example, Sauvignon Blanc is typical for that. In the past, they were more vegetal sensory parameters, and nowadays more fruity character of the wine. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you good weather in this year and good harvest in 2021. Bye bye, na svidenje.
So, thank you very much, Yanis, and also Danila. We are back live at the first International Expert Congress of Football and Wine Lovers. It is the 2nd of July today, and speakers from 8 different European wine growing countries are represented on the screen. A truly exceptional moment. Thank you very much, Danilo. Thank you very much, Yanis, for all your explanations. That has been very important and also very interesting. So now I take the liberty of announcing you the next speakers, and I look forward to listening the remarks of Karl Diewald and Georg Schweitzer, both of them from Austrian nationality, and we are looking forward to do that all together. Thank you. Karl, it's on you.
Hallo liebe Freunde, ich und das gesamte österreichische Winzerteam wollen euch auch ganz schön grüßen. Wir hoffen, es geht euch allen sehr gut und ihr seid gesund. Ja, auch bei uns in Österreich haben wir natürlich mit der Pandemie sehr zu kämpfen und haben eine sehr schwierige Situation. Gerade bei uns in der Winzerbranche gibt es aber sogar einige, die von dieser Pandemie profitieren. Hauptsächlich die größeren Weinbaubetriebe, welche gelistet sind bei den Lebensmitteleinzelhandel, die sogar einen größeren Absatz als zuvor haben und hatten. Für sehr viele andere Winzerbetriebe, wie auch ich es bin, ich habe 12 Hektar Weingärten und wir liefern ca. 65 bis 70% in der Hotellerie und Gastronomie. Die war in den letzten 12 Monaten für 7 Monate bei uns in Österreich geschlossen. Kann man sich natürlich vorstellen, wie hoch der Ausfall bei uns war. Wir konnten es etwas kompensieren mit unseren Privatkundschaften, aber wir hatten schon einen 50% Umsatzverlust. Aber so geht es nicht nur mir, sondern auch sehr vielen anderen Winzern. Wir haben jetzt eine große Weinmenge in Österreich in den Fässer lagernd. Dazu wird aber mehr unser Herr Diplom-Ingenieur Schweizer berichten, der für uns diesen Bericht gemacht hat. Ja, zum österreichischen Winzerteam. Auch da natürlich keine leichte Situation. Wir haben die Vorgaben unserer österreichischen Bundesregierung sehr, sehr ernst genommen. unser Trainer vielleicht sogar etwas zu ernst. Wir haben geplant gehabt, letzten August ein Spiel gegen steirische Winzerkollegen, aber vor lauter Vorsicht hat unser Trainer das dann auch im letzten Moment dann absagen wollen und wurde auch dann abgesagt. Somit konnten wir uns leider das letzte Jahr gar nicht treffen. Wir haben aber jetzt am 31. Juli ein Spiel in Retz, in der wunderschönen Weinstadt Retz, gegen österreichische Fußballlegenden, wo wir hoffen und wir glauben, dass wir da auch wieder Schwung und Fahrt aufnehmen können. Und ja, dann wird hoffentlich alles wieder besser in beiden Bereichen, auch in der Wirtschaft, im wirtschaftlichen Bereich, wenn dann hoffentlich wieder der Sommer gut wird, wenn viele Gäste kommen und wir dann unsere Weine wieder gut absetzen können und natürlich auch beim Winzerteam, wo dann wieder Schwung reinkommen sollte. Wir haben dann auch im November noch vor, dass wir dann in der Halle nochmal trainieren und freuen uns aber sehr, sehr schon auf die Europameisterschaft, auf die Wien Euro 2022 in Tschechien, wo unser Freund Martin Schlatz sicher eine großartige EM ausrichten wird. Bis dahin, hoffe ich, dass wir uns einmal wiedersehen. Ich habe gehört, eine kleine Abordnung von den Freunden aus Deutschland soll uns alle ja fast besuchen im Juli. Da freue ich mich schon sehr. Da werden wir in Wien ein Treffen organisieren. Sonst, wie gesagt, wünsche ich euch noch einen schönen Tag. Hoffe, dass ihr alle gesund seid und gesund bleibt. Und ja, freue mich auf ein Wiedersehen. Alles Gute und schöne Grüße, euer Karl.
Ja, grüß Gott, ein herzliches Willkommen aus dem Burgenland. Ich begrüße alle Nationen, die nächstes Jahr bei der Fußball-Europameisterschaft der Winzer teilnehmen werden. Ja, Corona. Corona ist ein großes Thema bei uns in der Weinwirtschaft, natürlich auch in Österreich. Die Auswirkungen, die Corona bei uns hatte, waren eigentlich, wenn man sich die Zahlen anschaut, sehr dramatisch. Ein paar Zahlen zu Österreich. Wir haben ungefähr 240 Millionen Liter Wein, den wir produzieren im Jahr. Wir konsumieren auch ungefähr die gleiche Menge, das heißt, wir sind ausgeglichen. Ungefähr so 65 bis 68 Millionen Liter gehen in den Export, das wird auch wieder importiert, daher ist diese Ausgeglichenheit gegeben. Und der Einfluss von Corona, ganz im Speziellen das Schließen der Gastronomie und die Events, die verboten waren, hatten eine wirklich große Auswirkung auf uns. Laut 2019, Statistik von 2019, werden ca. 58% der Konsumation in Gastronomie und bei Events gemacht. Das ist also mehr als die Hälfte des Weins wird konsumiert oder wird eben nicht konsumiert in einem Lockdown-Monat. Wenn man das runterrechnet, rein statistisch gesehen, sind es ungefähr 12 Millionen Liter pro Jahr, also 11,3 ganz genau zu sein, Liter pro Monat, die nicht getrunken werden. Wir hatten im Jahr 2020 im Frühjahr einen Lockdown von circa 2,5 Monaten und dann Richtung Winter gehend wieder ab November einen kompletten Lockdown. Das heißt 4,5 Monate im Jahr 2020, wo Gastronomie zu war, wo die Events verboten waren. Das heißt, wenn ich das jetzt hochrechne, sind wir circa bei 45 bis 50 Millionen Liter Wein, die nicht getrunken worden sind. Und jetzt im Jahr 2021 hat der Lockdown angehalten, der ist gegangen bis in den Ende April, Anfang Mai hinein. Das heißt, hier kommen noch einmal 4,5 Monate dazu. Das heißt, summa summarum, im Großen und Ganzen reden wir über 100 Millionen Liter Wein, die uns Corona gekostet hat, was das Trinkverhalten betroffen hat. Wir hatten zwar Zuwachs im Export, wir hatten Zuwachs in der Konsumation zu Hause. Das macht zusammen ca. 12, 13 Millionen Liter aus, aber das gleicht bei weitem nicht den Verlust aus, den wir durch Corona hatten, weil die Gastronomie eben zu war und weil keine Events möglich waren. Ja, das ist jetzt die Situation. Mitte des letzten Jahres kommt noch dazu, dass unser Bestand in den Weinkellern weit mehr als eine durchschnittliche Ernte war. Es waren ungefähr 300 Millionen Liter, die in den Kellern herumliegen, noch vor der Ernte 2020. Dazu ist eine normale Ernte 2020 mit 240 Millionen Liter dazugekommen. Jetzt kann man sich das Bild vorstellen, 540 Millionen Liter Wein nach der Ernte aktuell da und uns gehen 100 Millionen Liter ab in der Konsumation. Also 1/5 aus dem Ganzen, das gilt es aufzuholen in den nächsten Jahren.
So, impressive numbers. A very warm and special thanks to the two speakers from Austria, to Karl Diewald and Georg Schweitzer, for your commitment and the time you have given us today. A wonderful presentation with a lot of information for all the European wine growers. If I think about these numbers, I get scared. I get scared about that. But listen. We are going right now to a discussion, and I saw that we have a little bit more chat messages and questions from the chat, but unfortunately until now I didn't have anything. So I'm going quickly to some of our speakers back and giving them some questions. Probably first of all already to Karl. Karl, your Chancellor Sebastian Kurz has by European standards, acted very quickly, consistently, and sometimes harshly in the pandemic. How have the wine growers reacted to this, and are the Austria's wine growers behind these decisions? If you want to have my questions in German, you can ask me. Did you get my question, Karl?
Besser in Deutsch bitte nochmals, lieber Martin.
Also euer Kanzler Sebastian Kurz hat für europäische Verhältnisse ja sehr schnell, konsistent und auch manchmal sehr hart in der Pandemie gearbeitet. Wie haben das die Weinbauern aufgenommen in Österreich, wenn ich die Zahlen jetzt gehört habe?
Ja, war natürlich schon sehr schwierig für uns, weil er wirklich sehr streng gehandelt hat. Aber natürlich hat keiner ganz genau gewusst, wie sich das Ganze wirklich entwickelt. Man hat ja Italien begonnen bei uns in Europa, wo es ja sehr schlimm war. Und auch da war bei uns die Befürchtung, dass es sehr viele Tote geben könnte. Und von dem her ist die Gesundheit eigentlich vorangegangen. Und ja, man muss damit jetzt halt leben.
Gut, danke vielmals, Karl. Eine kleine Anschlussfrage an dieses Thema. Ich werde sie auch nachher kurz auf Englisch noch stellen. Was denkst du, das sind die wichtigsten Erfolgsfaktoren für die kommenden Monate beziehungsweise die Nach-Corona-Zeit für den österreichischen Weinbau? I just quickly translate that into English. Dear Austrian delegation, what do you think are the most important factors for the successful survival of Austrian viticulture in the post-Corona period?
Ja, wie gesagt, also ich bin auch ein Impffreund. Ich hoffe, dass sich in Österreich sehr viele gegen Corona das Virus impfen lassen und dann wird es hoffentlich auch wieder aufwärts gehen mit der Konsumation von Wein. Natürlich viel Werbung muss gemacht werden. Und ja, also wie gesagt, also das Impfen ist sehr wichtig auf der ganzen Welt. Dann wird der Tourismus wieder öffnen, Gastronomie, und dann wird auch wieder mehr Wein verkauft werden.
Gut, danke vielmals, Karl. Ich hätte einige Fragen zu Slowenien gehabt. Ich möchte meinen Präsidenten kurz anfragen. Robert, ist die slowenische Delegation überhaupt online? Sehe ich die gerade jetzt? Ansonsten stelle ich die Frage an dich dann, beziehungsweise an meine anderen Kollegen, wenn das okay ist für euch. Weil es ist eine Frage, die sich eigentlich auch damit befassen tut, wegen dem Klimawandel. Was denkst du, Robert? Wird sich die Weintypen, werden sie sich more adaptieren ans Klima, an den Klimawechsel, oder werden sie sich mehr angleichen an den Konsumenten? So, my question in English, that you give some time, some seconds to understand it. Dear delegates, what do you think? Will the wine types of all of your countries be adapted more to the climate change or to the consumer within the next 20 years? Musst dein Mikrofon einstellen, Robert.
Yeah. Excuse me. Thank you very much, Martin, for your questions. I have to excuse Danilo. He is a little bit of problem with his connection in Slovenia and has low connection speed. He sent me best greetings. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, thank for the question, and I have to answer it, but I have a good colleague of mine, Edmund Diesler, beside me. He is a practitioner in the themes, and so I please want to ask him to answer these questions.
It's a good question. I think we have to see that neither the wine quality and also the consumer needs will be changed in the next years, caused by the climate change. We wait for other wines, but I think mostly the qualities, the wine grapes and the qualities will change in the next years, but they will adapt also the consumer needs. This is a balance between wine quality and consumer needs also in the next years. We can only produce that what consumer needs. If the consumer don't drink our wines, our products, then we will lose the consumer the affairs.
Thank you very much, Edmund. And by the way, hello, Edmund. A long time ago that we didn't.
I did, yeah.
But it's pleasure to see you. By the way, let me ask you some more questions, even to the panel related to the wine. And I have a question to Martin Klad. Dear Czech colleagues, I think you were also very isolated from the markets during the pandemic. How is the mood among the wine growers in the Czech Republic? Lieber Martin, ich kurz auf Deutsch. Ihr wart ja so wie wir das mitbekommen haben, in der Pandemie ziemlich isoliert aus. Ihr habt auch sehr starke, wie auch Österreich, sehr starke Eingriffe ins persönliche und ins öffentliche Leben gehabt. Wie ist eure Stimmung bei den Weinbauern im Moment? Du musst auf weiß schalten, also rot abschalten.
Hi, Martin, and hi to all. Thank you for your question. I try to say it with my easy English. When I have problems, I try with the German. I think that we are a little bit tired because it's a long time with this isolation, and it's necessary to say that now in this time between the spring and between the summer was the mood a little bit optimistic. But as you know, next week was a tornado by us in the Czech Republic by the border, with the border with Austria. And we have there 4 villages there was in this area. And I think 30-40 winemakers and a lot of small winemakers, like a garden winemakers. So now it's not idle time to be optimistic, and the priorities is on this way to help these winemakers and in this area. But I think that in 1 month, with the help with the Wine Fund, with the Ministerium of Agriculture, and with help with the governor of South Moravia region, it will be better. Also with the pandemic, and also with the tornado and the effects after the tornado. So
thank you very much, Martin, for your explanations. That also sounds, and Right now, I'm changing to Luigi. Luigi, are you listening? Is Italia listening to us? I see he is laughing, but I don't hear him. You have to put the red flag away, okay? Ciao, Luigi. Everything is okay. It looks like you are looking very good. But we don't hear you. We don't hear you. Wir hören dich nicht. Jetzt ist besser. Guten Morgen, Luigi. Hallo. Buongiorno.
Buongiorno Martin.
Come va il grande capo dell'11 del vino?
Com'è?
Come va il capo dell'11 del vino?
Allora, il campo degli 11 del Vino, es geht sehr, sehr gut. Wir treffen uns ab und zu ein Teller Spaghetti, ein Glas Wein, diskutieren wir mehr oder weniger. Was ist die Zukunft der Fußball in der Weinelf? Was haben wir verpasst? Natürlich sehr viel verpasst. Unsere alten Freunde lange nicht mehr gesehen. Wir werden hoffen, dass die Pandemie langsam zu Ende geht, damit wir uns wieder treffen können, egal wohin. Ja, die Pandemie, habe ich schon alle gesagt, dass der ein bisschen betroffen ist mit dem Verkauf. Die Hotels, die Restauranten waren zu. Aber zu Hause ist mehr getrunken worden als früher. Weil, wenn man sieht, wir haben nachher die Dottoressa Scalzini machen lassen, da könnt ihr das sehen. Wir haben einen Zuwachs bei der Lebensmittelsupermarkt. Und ich bin heute noch wie vor der Meinung, dass Wein ist keine Alkohol, sondern ein Lebensmittelteil. Und deswegen ist die Lebensmittel mehr verkauft worden. Die Leute waren zu Hause, haben mehr gekocht, mehr getrunken. Und daher, die Export war klar gestoppt. Das hat wieder langsam angefangen, Gott sei Dank. Die Produktion läuft nach wie vor. Die Reben bleiben nicht stehen, die wachsen. Und was Klimawechsel, wie du vorhin gefragt hast, es ist wie überall das Gleiche. Zu trocken, zu nass. Wenn es regnet, macht er 15, 20 Zentimeter Wasser. Oder haben wir 6, 8 Monate, zwischen 4 und 6, 8 Monate Trockenheit. Aber damit muss man leben, sind wir nicht die Einzigen. Ich war am Montag in Stuttgart. Bin fast überschwommen worden. Ja. Vor lauter Regen. Aber habe ich mich geschlichen, ist nichts passiert. Was Gesundheit betrifft, in Italien haben wir jetzt eine schwache Zahl von Infizierten, 600, 700 am Tag. Es ist alles offen geworden, keine Masken draußen. Abends können wir schon feiern auf die Terrasse, auch im Restaurant sind sie eröffnet. Ja. Ich hoffe, dass langsam die Normalität, die meisten sind geimpft worden, über 51 Millionen habe schon die erste Impfung, trotz schlechter italienischer Organisation. Dürfen wir schon frei rumlaufen und das ist das Positive dabei.
Gut, Luigi, danke vielmals. Wir werden dich nach der Mittagspause oder nach dem kurzen Break werden wir dich nochmals hören. Danke vielmals. Just an information for all our English listeners. We are trying to translate all the informations you got from in German or in different other languages into English, that you can follow all the informations under one language. Thank you very much for all your understanding. And for all the speakers right now giving us some information. Right now, it's 11:15. We are doing now a short break until 12 o'clock. And on 12 o'clock, we are going ahead with Luigi again, and then with our newest scholarships named 8 nations. Please stay with us from 12 o'clock Central European time on. Thank you very much for listening us, and I wish you a good break. Take a coffee, probably better a glass of wine, but also a coffee, and see you again at 12 o'clock. Thank you very much. Dear listeners, a wonderful good day and a warm welcome to the first UENFW Expert Congress. My name is Martin and I will be accompanying you all through the day. And we are back live at the first International Expert Congress of Football and Wine Lovers. It is the 2nd of July 2021 today, and speakers from 8 different European wine growing countries are represented. A truly exceptional moment. Now, I have the pleasure to announce you a speech from Luigi Brunetti. Luigi Brunetti is our honorary president and the capo dell'11 del vino, means the chief of the best 11 football wine players around the world. Luigi, you have the word.
Yeah, ciao Martin.
We are responsible for the education of young people. They need to travel to learn European wine culture. 16 weeks our scholarship offers insight in an educational institution or university as well as a top company. Luigi Brunetti, Honorary President of the Union of European National Football Teams of Winemakers. We proudly present the UENFW 8 Nations Scholarship. One idea, 8 nations take part, 16 weeks abroad in total, 1 scholarship per year, 1 scholarship participant in selection. Requirements: 18 to 25 years old, student viticulture and enology, wine business or trainee. English language skills. Inhabitant of the European nation, soccer player. Apply now for 2022. The application windows open on July 2nd until October the 1st.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of wine and soccer, why am I standing here next to this pale gentleman? The answer is quite easy. Already 150 years ago, this year, he was quite aware of the fact that we need to have a very, very good education to be able to consist and exist in the future. Eduard von Lade was the founder of our now university, where we have one of the very best education systems for enologists in Germany. In general, what is an enologist these days? I think it has very much changed over the last decades. You know, it's not just making a good wine. These days, an enologist has to know about climate change, new technologies, what does the consumer want, new trends, global competitions, what are our competitors down under, for example, or in South Africa or in America, what are they doing? So how can we compare, how can we compete with these products in the future? And therefore, we need to have a good education. And I think that this is given in Europe. We have all around Europe very good institutions where we have academic education, but also non-academic education, which is very, very much important these days. It's not only the climate change, it's really going into the future, seeing what our consumer want, what they are asking for. And we have to be able to deliver that on a constant basis with changing conditions each year. And therefore, it's very, very important, particularly for our young students, that they have the chance to go to other countries, to go abroad, to exchange information, to also exchange possibilities of different opinions, knowledge, experience, to be ready for the future, to have a very good networking system, to be able to exchange when it comes to very pressing situations. And I think, therefore, every kind of support for our students to share this information, to gain this information, is very much not only accepted, but wished for and very much appreciated. So thank you very much for all of those who are supporting the scholarships, and I wish all the students who have the chance to get on the scholarships good luck and all the best for the future.
Thank you very much, Monika Christmann from University of Geisenheim. This is a unique example of how European wine countries can contribute and can work together. Please, for all students, apply on the website, on our website, and being part of this new project, 8 Nations. Right now, we are going throughout to one of our colleagues again, to Luigi Brunetti from Italy. Luigi, you have the word together with Julia.
Liebe Freunde der Weinelf, Ungarn, Slowenien, Tschechische Republik, Deutschland, Schweiz, Österreich, Portugal, an alle miteinander. Hoffe, dass meine Message euch in bester Gesundheit trifft. Und ich hoffe, dass wir uns so bald wie möglich treffen, begegnen. Natürlich bei uns, so wie bei euch auch, diese Pandemie hat ein bisschen Straße hinterlassen. Wir sind halt mit einem blauen Auge daraus gekommen. Die Geschäfte waren nicht schlecht. Natürlich könnte es besser sein, aber durch die Pandemie, Sie wissen ja, die Gastronomie, die Hotellerie war alles geschlossen. Dadurch, wenn die Hotellerie und die Gastronomie geschlossen sind, wird weniger getrunken. Aber Gott, wir sind gesund. Ich hoffe, ihr seid auch gesund und wir uns bald treffen. Die Geschäfte kurbeln an und ich freue mich sehr, wenn wir uns bald wiedersehen in aller Gesundheit. Was Pandemie betrifft, wir sind in einem sehr guten Stadium. Jetzt können wir ohne Maske rumlaufen oder beziehungsweise im Restaurant essen gehen, draußen drehen. Wir dürfen auch im Hotel. Touristen fangen an zu kommen. Daher, ich glaube, dass die Pandemie groß und ganz ein großer Teil überwunden haben. Alles Gute und auf baldige Auf Wiedersehen. Eure Freund aus Italien.
So, good morning or good evening to everybody. I'm Giulia Scalzini, a winemaker and member of the Undici del Vino Italian Wine Association. So today I'll try to briefly explain to you the effect of the socio-economic crisis due to COVID-19 pandemic on the Italian wine market. So let's start. So, as you may know, the spread of COVID-19 has not only led to many deaths, but also to social and economic downturn globally. In this context of economic global crisis, what happened to the Italian wine market? Well, the Institute of Services for the Agricultural Food Markets in Italy estimates that the amount of money that Italian families spend at the restaurant decreased by 42%, with severe consequences for wine commercialization. In these tables, the agri-food trade balance in value are shown from January to November 2020. And you can see that for wine and musts, import and exports, there is a decrease by 11 and 2.8% respectively, with a loss of 130 million euros compared to the previous year. So, as regard the tourism was stopped during lockdown and thereafter, and also obviously wine tourism was stopped, and the trade of products among countries has been disrupted or decreased, and this general situation has greatly influenced the wine market. In fact, according to Nomisma Observatory, only 1 of 10 wineries, Italian wineries, increased its turnover in 2020, but for more than 7 of 10 wineries, sales decreased. Here below are reported some results of a survey conducted by the FIVI, the Italian Federation of Independent Vignerons of Italy. And the results of the survey shows that the 92.5% of the interviewed wineries, that are generally small and family-run companies, registered a decreased turnover over the period from the 1st January to the 31st of October 2020, with different percentage of loss, but in the major part, the loss is registered between 20 and 40%. As regard the quantity of wine produced in 2020, the ISTAT, the Italian National Statistical Institute, recorded a 2% drop in the quantity of wine produced. In particular, among the regions with the greatest wine growing vocations, the most suffering were the regions of the south, of the center, and some regions also of the north. And overall, the value of wine productions, also considering the unsold product, decreased by 3.4%. So therefore, it's a worrying situation, but it's not a dramatic percentage. So let's try to understand the reason. If on one end, the lack of tourism, export, and restaurants activities has caused several consequences for the wine market. On the other hand, the habits and lifestyle of Italian people changed during lockdown. So wines become self-gratification products to be consumed at home. And in particular, here there is reported a table from a scientific study conducted in 2020. In this study, the authors make a very accurate analysis on the consumption resilience effect during the Italian lockdown. And as you can see, wine is collocated among the products with a comfort effect. So in this sense, it is a good data, very comfortable data. Maybe this is the reasons of the resilience of wine prices that, yes, a little bit decreased, but with a slight decrease and not comparable from the decrease of other products, like, for example, in the yellow line, we can see the olive oil reduction of prices during the COVID-19 period. Also, the way of selling and reaching customers have changed, obviously. So here is reported a table that shows the variation in Italian sales channels after coronavirus crisis. And if you can see, there is a variation and enhancement of the e-commerce channels by 160%. So very great increase. And in fact, the crisis, the new challenges has in certain way pushed towards a rapid progress of digitization. So this is another positive data. in some way. In conclusions, the balance of the situation is a balance between light and shade, and what's next is very difficult to predict. On one hand, the resilience effect of the wine Italian sector is comfortable, and what are the future perspectives for Italy? Well, the evidence of this period past is that industries and producers who had differentiated sale channels and searching had a better chance to survival in this kind of crisis. So in some way we have to learn the lessons and try to turn the crisis into an opportunity, also to face the new challenges that in the future certainly we had to face. So here there is the bibliography with the sources that I used for the presentation, and if you want, you can consult them whenever you want. Thank you for your attention, and bye.
Very warm and special thanks to the two speakers, to Luigi and to Giulia, for your commitment and the time you have given us today. A wonderful presentation with a lot of input for all European wine growers. Thank you very much. Now, dear listeners, our dear and esteemed colleagues from Hungary should be on the screen. One of the first big meetings that we had was in Budapest at the bridge nearby the Parliament building. Unfortunately, we did not receive any contributions from Hungary, which makes us a little bit sad. However, we understand that the Hungarians will hopefully rejoin our federation in the future, and we are happy to shake hands with them accordingly. And hopefully, best greetings from all of us to Istvan. We will be happy to see you very soon again. Now, I allow myself to take the liberty to announcing you the next speakers, and I look forward to listening to the interesting remarks of Edmund Diesler and Simone Lose from Germany, together with all of you.
I would like to welcome you to this International Expert Conference. Our Wine Elf was founded in November 2005. Ever since, we have been very busy traveling around Germany and Europe to bring our cultural asset closer to the consumers and to promote wine and its moderate consumption. In many soccer matches with our European winter friends, we have encouraged international exchange and supported various projects. Our active members are mainly wine growers and people working in the wine industry. In these last 15 years, our main focus at Wine Elf has been on the sportive competition with our European colleagues and in the cultural and social interaction in the so-called third half. Here, contacts were nurtured, bonds were forged, and expertise was exchanged and shared. The last 15 months have shown us how quickly fun and enjoyment can turn into a deep concern for friends and family, jobs, and our passion for soccer. During this difficult time, we have stood together courageously, exchanged ideas, and created new ones. The internet has been a great help. Many wine tastings and customer contacts were and are now virtual. We ship samples to our customers and taste and discuss the wines on screen. In the way, we stay in contact with the customers and connected through our wines. We face the same challenges in our professional organizations. Members' meetings do not take place and those people lose contact. We at the BDO, the Association of German Oenologists, have adapted very quickly. Our monthly meetings are currently held online via Zoom. For the first time, our annual conference in November last year has been prepared with tremendous effort and dedication of members as a hybrid event in Neustadt an der Weinstraße and has been held very successfully online. Beforehand, the general meeting was held online and amendments to the statutes were adopted. More than 120 people took part in the wine tasting, which was conducted online. They had pre-ordered and pay for the wine tasting. The DLR Neustadt then bottled the wine in small vials and sent the samples to all participants. Along with the presentations, this annual conference was very successful. That's why we decided to plan and hold the this year annual conference in Geisenheim as a hybrid event as well. In the International Oenologic Association, the UIOE, the Union Internationale des Oenologues, where I have been vice president for 6 years, it is more difficult to get together. Since last year, a general assembly with new elections is pending. According to the statutes, this must take place with personal attendance. Hopefully, we will be capable of doing this in the late year of 2021. With changes in our statutes, we will be able to hold general meetings and potential elections online. Our French colleagues were very seriously affected by Corona last year. Many of our colleagues lost their sense of smell and taste temporarily. This is, of course, very, very harmful for our profession. The French Oenologists Association, with the support of the French government, surveyed oenologists worldwide in late spring. More than 10,000 professional colleagues were questioned about the effects of COVID on the sense of smell and taste. The results were evaluated and presented in a study last month. Dear colleagues, as you can see, COVID-19 keeps us oenologists busy in all areas and countries. Let us now eagerly follow the explanations and the presentation of Dr. Simone Lohse, who will specifically address and consider the effects of Corona on the German wine sector.
Dear European Federation of the Wine World and footballers and wine lovers, thank you for inviting me to your this year's reunion on a virtual platform. My name is Simone Lohse. I'm the head of the Department of Wine and Beverage Business Research of Geisenheim University. I would like to give you some insights about the current situation of the wine world that is, of course, full of challenges and threats. And you might not be surprised that COVID-19 is the #1 perceived problem of the wine world at the moment. These are the results I'm showing you that stem from a cooperation we have with ProWein, the world's largest wine fair, where each year we are allowed to poll 2,000 to 3,000 wine producers and wine salespersons. They give us some indication about what is important to them and where they see some challenges in the wine world. Well, COVID-19 had an impact because it shifted wine sales channels. It impacted wine tourism that is very important for some nations. I know that there are some Italian and some French wine growers among you, and they depend very much from the Europeans and international people visiting your countries. COVID-19 has is expected to have negative effects on an economic perspective. So maybe people have less income to buy wine in the future. But that is only one among many threats and challenges we have in the wine world. You might know about the World Health Organization that sees wine, the cultural gift, as just another alcoholic beverage. And they are considering to maybe have the cigarettes, tobacco #1. So that is a problem we are all working on, that this is not impacting our ability to educate and to inform the consumers about wine. There is an important other thing I would like to tell you about, and you are all aware of that, and that is climate change, and I will come to that in a minute. We are in a very fortunate situation now in summer 21 that the trade and tariffs together with European Union and the US have been ceased. So there is now a free trade again of wine. But you are all aware of the trade fights and the trade war that is just emerging between China and Australia and impacting the trade of wine. Of course, trade is not a new issue. We just had Brexit finished now, and that had effects, but they basically became less important because there is now a new solution where everyone can deal with. Of course, there's also wine is one of many alcoholic beverages. And as we see in, for instance, United States, there are other beverages that become quite interesting for young people that we have to keep on fighting and informing and attracting the young people to try the gift of wine. Let me give you some insights about the effects COVID had on the wine industry. And this very much dependent whether in which country you are and if you were a large or a small company. These are results that we elicited about half a year ago in winter 2020, where we basically asked small, large producers and the cooperatives about the current situation, the economic situation, and about the expectations for each year. And as you see in the slides, there is some downward trend and particularly strong negative expectations for 21. I believe that things changed a little bit. So we are now in summer. The incidence rates are falling globally, and there is hope for a new summer experience, for a new tourism. So tourists are coming into your countries to drink and enjoy wine again and to visit your wineries. So I hope that next year, once we do the poll again, we will see that maybe there's a turnaround and that the wine estates are basically having new hope and new spirit and to have a better economic situation. Of course, COVID brought upon us a shift on sales channels. So most people continue to drink wine, but the way they could buy the wine changed dramatically. And that was, of course, because the on-premise sector was closed. So you couldn't go to a restaurant, you couldn't go to a cafe, you couldn't go to a pub, and there was basically the only place where you could drink wine was at your home, and that basically made people to buy their wine strongly online or in food retail and in supermarkets. So these are the channels that profited most strongly over the last 1.5 years. What I hear is that online store channels basically doubled their sales. And many of us are asking themselves, well, is this here to stay? Or is it just returning back to where we came from 2019? Well, I think each of you knows that online sales have been very strong in most other markets already, and that there is some consumers getting used to buying things online. So most in the industries are agreeing that this is here to stay, and online sales will play a strong role in our sector. Of course, most of you and each of us is expecting and hoping that the other channels are flipping back to where they came from. And for many countries, for instance, like France and Italy, export is very important. And we've seen some strong declines in the imports of the Asian countries,
where wine is still a very specific beverage that is only drunk in special social occasions. And we all hope that the economic recovery and this bringing back to normal will also have a strong impact on the normal wine consumption again. And each of us is hoping that summer 21 will be a summer of going out to a restaurant, having a glass of wine, visiting your favorite place again, visiting your wine growers again. So we all hope that the restaurants and hotels will come up to full swing. Nevertheless, it is important for us as the industry. Well, if online is here to stay, we don't want this to, just fall into Amazon's lap. We want that all of you producers are profiting from online sales. And that is not a very easy task. So basically online sales is new for many of us. And here we in Geisheim, we are also trying to educate our students and to bring the knowledge into the industry of how to do a good online sales, how to do newsletter marketing, how to do social media marketing, how to manage the manual sales channels you have. Online just being one of them, besides specialty wine retail, besides the on-premise sector, and besides maybe food retail. So that is a growing challenge for many of you and a new thing to learn. And I hope that we all succeed in this because those who can sell also reap the fruit, and they can basically profit from the sales and not leaving this to the big online sales channels. Besides that, of course, climate change is one thing that continued behind our back while COVID dominated our perspective. We've been asking 2019 wine growers and wine salespersons, well, did you experience the effects of climate change over the last 5 years? And almost every wine grower and cooperative agreed that, of course, we've experienced that. And you all know the stories about the heat waves, about the short water supply. This year we've seen extraordinary late frost events in France that we've never seen for many years, where a large share of the harvest disappeared. And this is because of an early ripening in early spring, and then an extraordinary cold wave coming back again. So all of us experience climate change. And unfortunately, there is not an easy vaccine against it, so it won't go away as quick as hopefully COVID is going away. Climate change is here to stay. So we have to think about what we can do to adapt to it and what we can do to actually prevent it to increase further. So I think these are the most important tasks for a long term of the wine sector. And as you also see in the slide is also the retailers has seen that something is happening, but there's still a lot of conviction required to basically tell these guys, well, we are affected from climate change, so you have to help us to basically get along with that. And we've been asking the wine growers, of course, what is required to adapt the sector to climate change. And of course, well, we have to get along with less energy and water because the precipitation pattern changed. Even here in Germany, we've been for a long term been the benefits of climate change, but already here we see there isn't enough water anymore in the hot, long summers, and our grape vines, they basically suffer. So there is required an investment to get along with less water, with less energy. And that isn't a very easy task because the wine sector is not one of the most profitable one. So we might require help for us to basically invest in technology to help us save water and energy. Of course, we have to change the way we treat our wines in the vineyards. To maybe change the way how we expose them to sun, the way how we can have longer ripening periods, so we don't have high alcoholic wines. Because that is already seen at the trade sector, and consumers don't necessarily want to drink wines that have 15% of alcohol. In the long term, of course, we have to think about even 100 years ahead or 50 years ahead. if you plant a wine today, then it's growing for 40, 50 years. So if you plant something, you have to think about all the 50 years ahead. And we all know if we don't stop carbon emissions, climate change will increase. So the temperatures will increase, water shortages will increase. So if you plant something today, you very well have to think about what you're planting for it to adapt to those situations coming in the next years. Of course, there is already now a situation where we see those growing areas that have been great in the past are the first ones to suffer. Just look at the Douro Valley, where we have now so small yields that wine is actually becoming uneconomic. So you have a lot of work to do, but the yields are so low that you can't live from making your wine. Well, basically, everyone knows that wine is expected to move north, and we might have to think about new growing areas. And the UK is just the first of them, where wine growing is actually increasing a lot. So that is something where I'm sure we will have to deal with the next 50 years. But agree with me, please, that the best thing that we don't have to worry about this is basically stop climate change. And of course we are, as the wine sector, the canary bird, the first ones to realize the effects, but we are also here to contribute to stop emissions. And everyone in the industry agrees that basically we should focus more on sustainable production. And sustainable not only means organic, it also means less carbon emissions. And we should contribute to climate protection. And we hope that we can convince the consumer to follow us and to convince the consumers to pay more for sustainable wine. Although, as you can see in the results, only every second wine grower at the moment is hopeful that this is possible. But I believe all of us are seeing the effects of climate change, and it's our task to make the consumer clear that he too has to contribute here. You are an international association, and most things can be overcome by cooperation. It's much easier to invent something, to find something, to test something, and to share the experiences, to share the knowledge. And that's also the last message I have here for you is, we are possibly going into an age of new Cold Wars. We've already seen trade wars between Europe and the US, trade wars between China, the US, China, Australia. So your association is one great contribution to actually help to have international cooperation. And I believe personally that's the best thing for people to meet internationally and to just see, we are all the same. No one benefits from trade wars. And I hope that possibly next year, 22, you can again meet in person. You can have a great soccer match. And thank you for having the time to listening to my presentation. And I'm looking forward to meet you again. Thank you.
Wow. Wonderful presentations, a lot of informations. Congratulations to Edmund and Simone. I was flashed about what you said, and I think this is you reached a very good topic on it. A very warm and special thanks to that, to you too, for your commitment, for all the time you gave us today, and a wonderful presentations with a lot of informations for all our members. Now I'm just coming back on two different small topics. Just have a look that we are speaking all in English here, but if you have some presentations in German, we are translated into English afterwards, first of all. And please, if you have any questions, put it on the chat, on the YouTube chat. We are here and we will pick your questions and get it into the discussions at the end of all presentations. Now, next speakers are from Portugal. It will be Nelson Rodriguez, Pedro Andrade, and Timothy Allen Hawk. The stage is yours.
Hi, my name is George Sampaio. I'm Vice President of City of Anadia, President of Bairrada Wine Route, and Vice President of Portuguese Wine Routes. First, I would like to thank you for this opportunity. It's a huge honor for me. The challenge you gave me to speak in under 5 minutes about influence that COVID had in the wine sector in Portugal is not easy, considering the scale of everything we've experienced in the last year and the fact that there is still much we don't know because the pandemic is not over, and I am sure that are many consequences, economic, social, and even health, that we will only be able to analyze further into the future. However, I will try to give you some numbers that cover this topic. Portugal is a small country in Southern Europe with an economy closely linked to the primary sector and services, where wine production and tourism represent a very important share of the national gross domestic product, GDP. Like the rest of the world, in March 2020, Portugal came to a halt. We were forced to stay at home, schools and companies closed, with all the consequences which this has, especially in terms of employment. All of these had enormous repercussions on the habits and economy of each one of us. Overnight, the world changed, and we had to adapt to this new world. The closing of restaurants and hotels, the prohibition of events, parties, concerts, etc., and the circulation restrictions, either within the country or between countries, were the main causes of the negative evolution on the wine sector in Portugal, which concerns the domestic market with a fall in demand of 236 million euros, minus 22.5% compared to the same period of the previous year. And in volume, 28 million liters less, it is less 9.9%. I thought in distribution, even with the restrictions on the opening hours of large supermarkets and convenience stores, as well as the consumption restrictions in public spaces, when we compare the numbers of 2020 and 2019, we observe an increase in sales of 6.5% by volume and 6.6% by value. But it is in the restaurant and hotel sector that losses are more pronounced, with 44.7% in volume and 45.4% in value when comparing 2020 with 2019. The fall in tourism contributed a lot to the decrease of sales in the national market. For the first time in the wine sector, the national market was below the value of exports at 30 million euros. Tourism represented in 2019, before the pandemic, 26.9 million tourists in Portugal, of which 16.3 million were foreigners. This sector represented 16% of the national GDP of Portugal. All this stopped. In 2020, Portugal had a drop of 61.3% in the number of guests compared with 2019, and a drop in profits of 57.6%. In Portugal, consumption decreased per capita from 22.4 liters in 2019 to 44.9 liters in 2020. These losses were felt more in the sale of DO and IG wines, as well as in medium and high value wines, and when associated with insufficient storage capacity, caused very strong damage to treasury and to the capitalization of companies, in particular small and medium ones. In addition, there were very strong consequences for the average price of wine, which decreased by 13.9% compared to the previous year, with repercussions throughout the entire chain. In the foreign markets, curiously, the trend was the opposite, and Portugal was one of the countries that increased its exports in 2020, 5.3% in volume and 3.2% in value, when compared to the previous year. However, with a decrease in the average value per liter of 1.9%. What we need now is to prepare the future, with the hope that everything will return to the normality we had before this pandemic. The data we have for the first months of 2021 are encouraging, noting a slight reversal of the trend in the national market, with an increase in sales of 1.6% in volume and 3% in value, and an increase in the average price of 1.3% when comparing the same period in 2020. I thought it is not measured in all types of wines. In DO and IG wines, there was an increase in sales approximately 7%. I thought in these wines, the average price reduction was maintained, which had a loss of 0.5% in DO and 6% in IG, comparing period in 2020. This is the data I wanted to give you, which shows in a very global way what this pandemic has brought to the wine sector in Portugal. What remains now is to work for the future, understanding what we have to do, outlining strategies and working hard to welcome you again in the best possible way. Portugal is a safe country with people who like you to feel welcomed. We want to continue to be the best tourism destination in the world because that's the only way we can continue to receive the best tourists in the world, which are you. Thank you very much.
Well, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure and honour to be able to address you at this virtual conference of the Union of European National Football Teams of Winemakers. I was, of course, fascinated to hear about your organisation. It brings together two subjects which are both very dear to me and also very conducive to friendship and provoking such passions. So it's a very good idea to have this organisation. I really wish you the best of luck. I have to thank also the organisers for allowing me to address you. I am informally representing Portugal and to my friend Pedro Andrade, who invited me. Pedro is definitely a very good winemaker. I have no idea if he's a good footballer, but I'm sure you'll find out very soon when you have the opportunity to play with each other. I'll be very curious to know how that goes. So I was asked to talk on a subject that can be related to COVID, and I think the subject I've chosen certainly touches on this. And well, let's see. Bearing in mind the titles I had seen from my eminent colleagues, I decided to prepare a brief presentation on a subject that has been occupying me over the last couple of years. Just to explain, my background has been around the area of science and technology of wine and food for the last 30 years. And over the last 5 or 6 years, I've been involved in starting up some strategic initiatives for research in the favour of the wine industry in Portugal. But I've also maintained my interest in the areas of food science, food technology, and more recently in the areas of food policy. And so this presentation somewhat brings these two areas together. Let me just start off with my slides. We can see from this first slide, this is the statement, where will wine fit into the evolving food system? And in the second slide, I have a very simplistic depiction of a food system. This is, of course, very generic and very simple. In the grey boxes, we have what they call the actors, which are the intervenients in the processes which leads to the production of food, including the last step, which is always consumption. And the yellow boxes, we have what are seen to be outputs, consequences, if you like. And included in this, we have obviously the basic description of the food chain, which moves from primary production and the inputs involved in it, all the way through processing and packaging, down through the distribution, retail, could be in food service, to the eventual consumption. So this is the classic chain, but also involved in the food system are, of course, the subsidiary industries which sell to these, but also the whole policy environment. So the regulatory, institutional and social environment involving universities, governments, banks, insurance companies, NGOs, which often have these antagonistic positions. So the food system itself is made up of the food chain, plus these secondary industries, plus the regulatory and policy environment. And that is the generic food chain. And we can see where this we can identify with in wine terms, because wine is produced as an agricultural product. It also has inputs from secondary industries. It also lives within a quite tightly regulated environment. It sells through its own channels, but it also sells through the classic channels which we use for the rest of our food intake, through restaurants and through the grocery, what's called the grocery line. So going through large distribution chains being sold to retail to us. And now a large part of wine actually does go down this route as well. We must admit this. So in the next slide, what I've done here is just outlined in this component here, which these authors of this particular depiction call the food environment, I think is where really wine is distinct from the other components of the food chain, the food system in this case, because I would argue it's very difficult for us to make arguments that wine represents a nutritional need. It's a very important part of many people's grocery shopping, but it's very difficult to make an argument that we actually need to consume wine. So, and that makes it distinct when we're discussing certain other elements concerning, for example, food security, which we'll go into in a moment. So basically wine does have some distinction. I just add here this curiosity, this little ring around the wine glass. It's very common when we have depictions of food consumption to include, especially pictorially, a wine glass illustrating beverages. Whereas very often wine is not considered in the actual arguments behind it, and this is very frustrating. We've seen these arguments also to do with we've also seen these arguments concerning road safety, where we see a wine glass as being depicted as generic alcohol, which we know is definitely not the case. So basically, I'm making a case here that even though the wine industry has been very careful and very diligent to, in some ways, distance itself from the rest of the food industry, and this has been very important for many aspects of wine, it's difficult nowadays to argue that we are so distinct as that. We are part of the food system. We are part of the food system. Just to illustrate this from a merely at the end of consumption, what I've done here is I've just presented some wines which I've seen on the website of a Portuguese supermarket, and I've converted their prices to 750 mils. And you can see that we can buy wines in a supermarket costing 58 cents for 750 mils equivalent, and we can buy them for nearly €100 a bottle. That's a discussion in itself, which is interesting. But in this context, what I'm saying to you is, in the first case, it's a grocery product. In this context, very much so. The second component is a wine which costs 58 cents per 750 mils is actually a cheaper form of alcohol than beer. It's 2.5 times cheaper in terms of the alcohol content than the cheapest of all beers. And even in terms of just volume, it's actually cheaper than the cheapest beers. So, must bear this in mind with all our other arguments we claim for wine. This is the panorama when these things go onto the supermarket shelves. So if I go to the next slide, what we have here is a depiction of the food system, where what we've done here is just used a different pictorial description, and at the lower part the authors have included the results, the outputs, in a more explicit way. So in this way the results or the outputs are listed as being related to social well-being, being related to food security, or being related to the environment. Now I would argue that all of these elements here in social well-being, these consequences are both relevant because wine affects them, and the wine sector is affected by them. And the same in the case of the environment. Wine is famously affected by climate change, also has a role in mitigating climate change. Wine has water needs, has water quality needs. Wine is often cited as being important in terms of biodiversity, etc., etc. And when we go down to the social well-being components, certainly employment, justice along the food chain, health, social capital, these are all elements which also the wine sector has to confront like any other sector. Where I would say, as I said before, that it's probable that it's difficult for us to make arguments is in this area of food security. Wine is not absolutely needed as part of people's day-to-day nutrition. So, for a number of reasons, the current outputs of the current food system in terms of social well-being and the environment and in food security are not sustainable. They've been identified as being not sustainable. Therefore, we have a need to change the way we produce and sell and consume foods. We have to do this. And by the same arguments I just said, we have to do this with the wine as well. We have to change the way we produce, sell, and consume. And we do understand that all these elements of the system are interconnected. If we make changes to one part of the system, it will definitely influence another part of the system, changing these outputs in a way we may not be able to predict. It's very likely we won't be able to predict it. Consequently, we have to be very intelligent in the way we make the transition from the system we have at the moment, and we migrate it to a system on the right-hand side here which is sustainable. And in terms of the aims of sustainability, we have some well-defined sustainability aims. We have the Strategic Development Goals, which we're all familiar with. These are both, depends on the level you want to get involved in, but they can actually be quite explicit and very detailed, or they can be quite generic. But they are definitely agreed across the world that this is the outputs we want in terms of sustainable development. So this is the challenge. We have to make sure through research and development policies, through other public health policies, educational policies, other elements of policy, tax policy, we want to migrate and change the system to one which is genuinely sustainable. And just to finish off, to explain that, of course, this is not my ideas. This is the current preoccupation. Number one, when food is being discussed, food and agriculture is being discussed in Brussels at present, and for the last few years, it's moving towards this sustainable food system. These are just two policy documents which are quite recent, 2019, 2020, and this is the outputs. We have also this policy initiative called Food 2030, where the European Commission, through various of its commissions, not one or two commissions, but across the whole Commission, they're actually trying to promote this transition to a new sustainable food system. Plus, we have the Green Deal, which everyone here is familiar with, I'm sure, the Green Deal, which has this element called Farm to Fork, which specifically addresses the food chain. So, just to finish and to tie up, the pressures to make profound changes to the food system globally are irresistible. This has to happen because at present, the disease burden, the pollution burden, and the use of resources are not sustainable, amongst other things. I would say that the wine sector shares almost all of the challenges that I've described, which are generic to the food system, but it does not have the positive food security and nutritional attributes of most other foods. Thus, the food sector must navigate carefully through this transition process and make sure that it's heard when the RD&I and other relevant policy decisions are being made. This is crucial. As we know, the wine industry does have very good representative bodies at national and European levels. I feel sometimes that the research agenda, they go past this. But anyway, I'm not here to make comments on that. I'm just here to flag up this need that there will be this change in the food system. It will also affect the wine production system and the wine sector, and it's important that the wine is heard in this respect. So thanks very much for your time. I enjoyed very much this experience, and I wish you the best of luck in your endeavors.
Thank you very much, Tim. Very impressive presentation, and believe me, we are all good footballers, except me. So let's gonna go, and also thank you to all the delegates from Portugal. Very important country also for us, and we are happy that you are also part of our committee. There is probably no better moment than this July in 2021, when the official European Football Championships are taking place in parallel with our Congress. I'm of course looking forward to the quarterfinals today and tomorrow, and I'm pleased to announce the country that is still in the competition. Warmly welcome to the Czech Republic to Martin Chlad and Mojmír Baron. It's your turn.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, good afternoon from Czech Republic. My name is Martin Chlad and I'm President Football Team of Winemakers here in Czech Republic and also Sales and Marketing Director Czech Wine and Grape Producers Association. It's perfect this type of conference because in the same time we are here 8 nations and also in the same time we are with our glass of mojito by the swimming pool. But to my topic, this is custom habits in the Czech Republic and trade reactions. At first, I want to say that we are 2 regions in Czech Republic, 6 wine sub-regions. Together we have 18,000 and 19,000 hectares of vineyards and also more than 1,000 registered wineries. Most frequent varieties in Czech Republic are Green Veltliner and Miller-Thurgau, but typical for us are Palava, it's our own variety, and Welsh Riesling. The wine purchase for in-home consumption have been growing continuously since 2017 in volume. The 2020 year saw growth of 12%. During the COVID pandemic, the share of spirit wines significantly decreased. And it was logic, because all of or most of the restaurants and wineries was closed in this period. The wines from Czech grapes, without barcode, reached the highest price. It is 140 crowns. It means 5.5 euro. Of course, average price. The household's expenditures as well as value per purchase have been increasing within the years. In 2020, grew by 9%. In 2020, the value per purchase grew up. The volume per purchase grew too and reached 1.7 liter. The household consumption increased as well as and reached 30 liters, what means the yearly increase of 10%. Continuously, the strangest wine on our market is logically the white wine. White wines strengthened the number of buyers and reached the level of 2017. The red wines experienced significant increase of purchase frequency. The red wines has been losing the buyers in long-term view. In the last 2 years, the situation was stabilized as well as in the frequency point of view. Between buyers, the strangest position has the discounters. The discounters overlook the position of #1 shopping place in 2019 and hold this position in 2020. The hippers are on the 2nd place, in the strengthened position by 1 percentage point in 2020, as well as e-commerce. Some sentence to key trends on a total market. At first, the still alcoholic wines market grew significantly in year-on-year measurement in 2020, in volume by 12% and by 12.9% in volume. Then is very interesting, and we see a higher purchase frequency for the bottled wines. The average household bought this wine type once a 3 weeks, 2 bottles, and paid about 130 crowns. Other points you can see on the screen. Key trends in formats and key accounts. At first, from the long-term view, we can say the households shift their expenses for wines to discounts, and Lidl especially, there is on the first position. In year-on-year view, hypermarkets strengthened their position by 1 percentage point and reach 27% share on the market in volume. Also, other points you can see on your screen. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, thank you for your attention. It was our short presentation, and in the end, I want to invite you to Czech Republic to Vino Euro 2022. You all are welcome. Goodbye.
Hello everybody, let me kindly introduce you my presentation about optimization of teaching and practical exercises during a pandemic. My name is Bojmír Baroň and I work in the University Department of Viticulture and Enology. Let me shortly introduce you our department. We belong to Mendel University, which is a medium-sized university in Czech Republic, about 10 to 12,000 students. And we are a part of Faculty of Horticulture in Lednice, which is a small village near Austrian borders. And our department covers about 300 students in bachelor, master and PhD degree, 6 academic staffs, 1 professor, 2 associated professor and 3 PhD colleagues, and 3 technicians for vineyards, winemaking and secretary, and about 15 PhD students. Something about our research activities. We have 4 different research areas. First is viticulture, where we are focused on breeding of new varieties and quality management in vineyards. The second one is wine technology, where we are focused on inhibition of spoilage microorganisms and new nanomaterials which are used in wine technology. In microbiology, we are focused on microbiome of vineyards and microbiome of different conditions during fermentation. And generally chemistry, where we have some innovations in fingerprinting of wine. We have quite nice background here, about 6 hectares of own vineyards, where the whole university has got more than 120 hectares of vineyards. We produce about 20,000 bottles per year, which are produced by students. And we have several labs where we have basic and advanced analytical tools. And from main courses, we teach viticulture, winemaking, and international winemaking, microbiology of wine and sensory analysis of wine and so on. About pandemic situation, everybody knows that Czech Republic was hitting very hard by pandemic. So it was very difficult for us. We had to switch all courses to online. We used Microsoft Teams application, and we had to create a lot of materials for students, especially e-text, e-supports. We sent them PowerPoint presentations, and the biggest discussion was about sharing of records.
where we decided to share records with students from online courses. After all, we had a lot of problems with practical subjects, especially subjects like sensory analysis of wine, which is impossible to lead in online. And we had to create a lot of tutorial videos for students from laboratory exercises. And during exams, we had a lot of problems with cheating. So I think that is impossible to hold students without cheating, because today's technology are very advanced and you can use, for example, voice searching, and there's no defense against it. And we had a lot of problems with bachelor and diploma thesis, where students had to finish their experiments. So we were waiting for permissions from government to allow them or to permit them to labs and to wine cellar to finish their experiments. And generally, both semesters we were waiting for blocks of contact teaching, where we had to finish these special subjects like sensory analysis of wine, which was mentioned. After all, I had to say that we all think that this pandemic situation has irreversible consequences for education on our department. Finally, I would like to welcome you to Lednice, to our department, to Czech Republic. We are looking for partners for European projects, proposals. We are looking for scientific cooperation. We are looking for Erasmus program. We are looking for exchanges of stuff, or just visit us, because Lednice is a beautiful town which has got beautiful chateau and park, and you're always welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you to our friends in Czech Republic. We're really looking forward to the next year when we are playing the Vino Euro Czech Republic 2022. And now the last country presentation is to call from our friends of the great nation of football and wine, Switzerland. Switzerland is also a very important partner in our association, and I would like to thank the President, Martin Viticulture, very, very much, especially for his excellent keynote speech and the entertaining moderation today. Martin, now I may ask you for your words as President of the Swiss team, and furthermore, we are looking forward to the presentation of Dr. Kathleen Mackey-Haas with the topic Good Food, Healthy Environment. The stage is yours.
Hello everyone. I'm extremely pleased that we can share some interesting aspects of viticulture and winemaking in Switzerland with you today. In this context, and first of all, I would like to add that without the help of our German and Czech colleagues, it would not have been possible to hold this webinar in this quality. Many thanks to Robert Leonard and Martin Glad and the teams behind the two national presidents. My name is Martin Viticulture, and I am both the president of the Swiss National Wine Growers Football Team and the president of the Swiss German Wine Association. And I have the honor of speaking you today in my capacity as a managing director and part founder of the Swiss Science Center of Viticulture and Enology in Wädenswil, which is situated about 20 kilometers outside of the biggest city in Switzerland, Zurich. Founded in 1819 as a Swiss-German experimental station for fruit, wine and horticulture, the first director was Professor Dr. Hermann Müller-Thurgau, very famous professor and breeder of the variety Müller-Thurgau. 1968, renamed as Federal Research Station for Fruit Growing, Viticulture and Horticulture. During this time, we had many world-renowned wine researchers as it is Koblet, Basler, Perret, Tanner, Brunner, etc., who made wine research a very well-known and respected research institute worldwide, with the discovery of malolactic fermentation and the promotion of integrated production and many other discoveries in viticulture and in enology. 1996, prioritization of the viticulture in French-speaking Switzerland and concentration of the fruit growing in German-speaking Switzerland, with a subsequent concentration at the sites. In 2014, it was a renaming, arrived as the name is Agroscope, and in 2017, we restarted and funded the Swiss Center for Viticulture and Enology Wädenswil as a PPP, which means a public-private partnership. In a public-private partnership, communities work with private parties, including private investment companies, as partners to fulfill a public task by pooling their resources and sharing both the risk and the responsibility for delivering that task. In this context, I'm happy to mention, and also a little bit proud, that we are the first PPP in the history of Swiss agricultural research and accordingly also have a pioneering role. At the Viticulture Center in Wädenswil, we basically work in a matrix organization with Agroscope. The vertical organization is oriented towards the various tasks in the wine sector. The entire organization in the horizontal area is oriented towards the value chain from planting the wine into enjoying the finished wine into the glass. This structure also allows us to combine research in direct connection with the needs of our stakeholders. The gears thus mesh optimally, all the more so as our main partners, Agroscope, in the PPP also offer a similar organization within the overall agricultural research. This cooperation is also the result of a continuous and transparent exchange between the stakeholders. Since we also see ourselves as a research platform, we also work together with other regional cantons, regional institutes, supra-regional institutes, or research-interested third parties. Here too, however, everything is subordinated to the idea that we bring Switzerland's rich wine-growing culture, which is over 2,000 years old, to the new heights, with innovation and research in order to further develop added value on the market. 16th of March 2020, 4 p.m. The world has changed. In the following, I would like to introduce you all the following sub-areas of wine. What was the general impact on wine in Switzerland? How politics has changed the status of wine? How has the market changed? Or how have the sales segments changed? Were there only winners, or were there also corresponding losers on the production and the sales side? And last but not least, what are the insights of the Swiss producers with the consumer, but also with the professional colleagues and in the internal committees? To give you a brief introduction, it is important to know that in Switzerland we had a national debt of about 28% of the GDP before the pandemic. This, of course, made it somewhat easier to quickly and unbureaucratically distribute money loans to companies so that their liquidity would remain safe. And it was really very simple. Fill out an A4 page, attach a business report, send it off, and after 24 hours, the cash was in the entrepreneur's bank account and an initial security for the continuation of the business was safe. An absolutely novelty in Swiss history, by the way. This initial security in an environment of uncertainty also meant that the producers were able to regain confidence very quickly and adapted very quickly to the pandemic. However, it must also be said that those producers or wine merchants, this also applies to the imported products, I say, who had previously sold a large part of their turnover in the gastronomy channel, had to bear huge losses in turnover. These were helped during the second lockdown from October to April 2021 with a so-called hardship package. The loss of sales, however, had to amount up to at least 40% of the total sales. I know a few cases of wine merchants who fulfilled this requirement, but not one single producer. The specialized wine merchants and producers were forced to focus very quickly on internet sales and the retail channel. This in turn led to a higher competitive situation. It is also very interesting that the Swiss population rediscovered Swiss agriculture and booked many more holidays in Switzerland itself due to the border closures. Retail should be seen as the counterpart. Since the producers' tasting rooms were also closed during a certain period, only the retail trade was open, which had to ensure the food supply of the Swiss population. Switzerland is a country with a direct democracy, and all Swiss voters are called to the ballot box 3 to 4 times a year to vote on proposals of the country and thus determine the direction of the government. COVID-19 resulted in the first phase of shifting political power to the Bundesrat, we call it Bundesrat, a kind federal council, which means all 7 ministers. In fact, the independent cantons no longer had anything or not much to say. This was then increasingly resolved and the democratic rules of the game were reintroduced. If we still had 3 political interventions at the national level in 2018, the wine was hoisted into overspheres with over 20 interventions in 2020. This also took us a new level in communication, and Swiss wine was a big topic in the media. Nevertheless, we also felt that there was not exactly a political split during this time, but the tone of voice was sometimes sharpened. We are not used to this in Switzerland, as democratic processes are usually rather slow. The pesticides initiative of the 13th of June 2021 was quite full of hatefulness and acts of vandalism. And the separation between the urban and the rural population stood out extremely clearly. In the big cities, the urge for more nature is great. Unfortunately, most people lack an understanding of what agriculture is doing today to produce even more sustainable and natural food. Organic does not simply mean no more spraying. And it is important that future generations in urban areas also receive more information about what it is correct. This is the only way to stop the alienation of agriculture and viticulture from the urban population. If you are looking on the sales increase during the lockdown, you will see that after the first lockdown, the sales has been increased by 18.2% from one year to the other. Even if we are comparing the whole year 2019 to 2020, we see an increasement in the retail sales of 13.6%. The hypothesis for the good results from Nielsen panel for 2020 were restaurant closures, event cancellation, etc. The work in the sector, so means the wine growers, the trade association, promotions, offices, etc. and the reduction of the shopping tourism. Shopping tourism is representing around 11 billion Swiss francs per year. On this chart, you can see how the wines from different regions of Switzerland have developed in comparison between 2019 and 2020. The color marks the region and the size of the bubble, the importance into the market. The first number indicates the increasement of volume, and the second number, the change of the average price in the same period. German-speaking Switzerland, this is the yellow dot in the chart, has gained extreme market share with the volume growth of almost 27% and a small price loss of 0.4%. And it's catching up strongly with the other regions. The reasons for this are certainly to be found in the lockdown, in that Mr. and Mrs. Swiss have rediscovered local production, and we in German-speaking Switzerland have been able to exploit this well. But all other regions have also made strong gains in the retail. This has also led to the retail market segment gaining market share during the pandemic. These have not yet been verified, but we expect up to 8% for the entire market. To summarize the external factors in the wine sector, we can make the following statements. The promotional activity on the market will remain greater. That means the market share of the retail trade will continue to increase. The private customers will tend to buy from wine growers and original producers again. This is an increased need for safety or security into the country, and due to the local trend even more. The online sales will continue to increase. This has already happened, and the digitalization had a huge impact not only on sales but also on the client's behavior. The specialized trade will quickly adapt to the new conditions, and this has happened. The Swiss wine market for specialized trade and gastronomy has suffered greatly, but will retake quick after opening. Perhaps even more interesting are the internal factors in viticulture, which can summarize as follows. We have grown together in the crisis due to political reasons, economic reasons. Exchange in the regions were very fast and constructive, but also the intensity has also shown that a strong representation at the national level is very important. The wine grower is not alone. Cooperations with other associations has become even more important in a digital world. Wine is a successful and demanded plant. Sales in volumes versus price shows a strong signal in production and exploitations. Structures into the wine industry are very important. We were faster than in all other regions with the measures. A federalistic structures with good leadership works in that way very well. However, these structures are distributed among different heads and regions, and we learn every day from each other. Finally, it remains me to thank all my staff, but also colleagues, friends, both nationally and internationally. The pandemic is not only a, hopefully, unique economic event, but has also shown how important the social environment of the individual is. Moreover, the world leadership has become enormously important again. A crisis is usually the best time to show how you are organized and what is really important in life. I thank you all for your attention and wish you all a good wine year 2021.
Good afternoon. My name is Katie Mackey-Haas and I lead the Viticulture Extension group at Aquascope in Wädenswil, Switzerland. Today I'd like to talk to you about the effect of COVID-19 on federal research in Switzerland. Aquascope is the Swiss Center of Excellence for Agriculture Research, and it's affiliated directly with the Federal Office of Agriculture. We conduct research along the entire value chain of agriculture and the food sector. Our motto is good food, healthy environment. Here you can see a short overview of the structure of Aquascope. We are defined by two major sections. The departments in blue are applied science departments, and the departments in green are basic research departments. The Viticulture Extension group can be found within the Applied Science Department of Plants and Plant Production. At our group, Viticulture Extension, we focus on applied viticulture and enology research. We focus on variety testing. We test new clone varieties for exempling of Reuschling, which is an autochthonous variety from the Lake of Zurich. We have 15 different clones planted here, and we test them over a range of 7 to 10 years to see what's best suited to the region. We also test hybrid varieties that have been bred by Agroscope employees. These include new varieties such as Carbonello and Norello. And we also focus on testing of new fungal resistant varieties. Our second major topic is crop protection. Here we look at testing reduced pesticide use in vineyards. We also focus on product testing of new organic and alternative products, as well as the monitoring of phenology, disease development over the season, as well as insect monitoring. We additionally do monitoring on pesticide residues. This not only in soils and on the roots of grapevines, but also in grapes and wine itself, so that we can help understand how pesticides are moving in our environment and help producers by suggesting strategies to reduce those residues. We also have a number of projects within the topic of enology. Here we test different yeast products as well as different acidification methods, and look to see that we are on top of all current methods within vinification in terms of climate change. And this includes accumulating information on fungal resistant varieties in the cellar so that producers can be informed about how best to use these new varieties to produce quality wines. As Martin mentioned earlier, we are within a public-private partnership with the Swiss Center of Viticulture and Enology in Wädenswil. They are a private organization, but they're also focused on practical research in viticulture and cellar technology, specifically for the German-speaking part of Switzerland, as well as providing modern solutions for management and marketing of wines. As you can see here, the Swiss Center of Viticulture and Enology has 3 different locations. The main location is Wädenswil, but there's also vineyards at the Peninsula Au, as well as in Stäfa, on the other side of the Lake of Zurich. Martin mentioned Dreistand earlier, and these are the 3 locations that make up Dreistand. The Swiss Center of Viticulture and Enology also focuses on research, as I mentioned. Their main research topics are crop protection, digitalization, and structural change and innovation. But they also have departments based on analytics and sensory analysis, as well as knowledge transfer, which includes publications, but also educational courses such as viticulture, winemaking, Instagram for the wine industry, and management. So as I mentioned, we're a public-private partnership. And in our specific case, that means that Agroscope, my group, is leading analysis and publishing viticulture and enology research. We also make wines from over 30 different varieties. The Swiss Center of Viticulture and Enology maintains the field experiments, as well as assists in monitoring and analyzes grapes, must, and wine samples. Both partners are responsible for supporting the German-speaking Swiss wine growers and winemakers, networking regionally and nationally, and also providing high-quality information to all stakeholders. Here's a short overview of the COVID timeline here in Switzerland. It was on March 16th, 2020 that we went into our first lockdown, And it was at the end of May when we started coming out of the lockdown. Here in Switzerland, we had a large easing of restrictions. There were events allowed with a maximum number of people, and there were no mask requirements except in public transportation. It wasn't until October 19th, 2020 that these restrictions started being in place again. And after the holidays, we went into our second lockdown on January 6th, 2021, which was only recently lifted in the middle of April. The mask requirements started also in October 2020 and are still in place. But at the moment, Switzerland is rather quickly easing the restrictions. So how did COVID-19 actually change our research? From the first lockdown in May 2020, working from home was required. Public transportation was strongly discouraged. And this meant that instead of my normal colleagues here in Wädenswil, I had more furry colleagues at home looking on. We also had to conduct questions, conversations, and meetings over the phone, Skype, Microsoft Teams, and Zoom. And suddenly we had to be proficient in all of them. But as part of the governmental branch of agricultural research, we are essential workers, and it was required that we continue working in order to ensure long-term research was a success. That meant that our grape harvest in 2020 went as usual. We also continued conducting work in the cellars, doing our best to maintain distance between employees. And as I mentioned, in the winter, when most of the work in the cellar was required, there were then mask requirements for everyone working, and no matter whether they could keep distance or not. Most conferences and seminars in 2020 were canceled for us. It wasn't until the winter of 2020-2021 that we started having virtual conferences again. However, because everyone was at home and there was no need to allot for travel time, there were actually more meetings and telephone conferences than normal, and our days were kept quite busy. In Switzerland, as I mentioned, we had quite a lot of luck in the summer of 2020, and things here were almost back to normal. So much so that in August of 2020, we were able to invite stakeholders to come and look at our field experiments and also conduct wine tastings of our research wines. So we had several disadvantages during COVID. Our social interactions were limited. I feel like there was a reduced innovation and spontaneous idea building because we weren't sitting around a table having a coffee or chatting more with each other. We were quite efficient. There were telephone conferences, there were meetings later, and people weren't taking the time to really exchange in an innovative way. There was also less ability for me to lead because I was not as often here in Wädenswil. I did not have the same interaction with my employees, which leads to a big change in terms of employee leadership interactions. However, we did have more publications produced, and I think we can all agree that we had more time with family. So we also had a lot of luck in our public-private partnership with the Swiss Center of Viticulture and Enology. They also worked throughout the entire pandemic, which meant that they continued managing our field experiments, they continued helping collecting data, and they also continued analyzing grapes, must, and wines. So we can very happily say that no experiments were lost. So overall, as a federal research institute in Switzerland, we have been very lucky during the pandemic. Our research pretty much continued as planned. Many conferences went virtual, but we found ways to interact from a distance. And the Swiss Center of Viticulture and Enology, Wädenswil, continued to provide consistent support. Thank you very much for your time, and I wish you a lovely afternoon.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you all of you for all the presentations. We are going right now into the discussion round, and I'd like to start with our honorary president, Luigi. Luigi, you have to put your button on to green, please, if that will be possible. I do have a question for you. As one of the oldest wine growing country and regions in the world, how the Italian and the European wine culture will continue to develop over the next 20 years. I put that especially for you because you have a great leadership and a great experience on Italian wines.
Das nochmal auf Deutsch, bitte.
Also, Luigi, ich würde gerne von dir wissen, als eines der ältesten Weinbauländer der Welt und in einer großen Kultur ausgestattet, wie siehst du die Entwicklung in der Weinkultur für die nächsten 20 Jahre? Auch in Bezug jetzt auf die letzten 18 Monate.
Ja, man hat über diese Pandemie geredet, man hat über den Klimawechsel geredet. Man hat aber nicht geredet, dass die ganze Universität und die ganzen Versuche auch mitgehen mit der Zeit. Also das heißt, früher hat man Wein angebaut, oberhalb der 500-600 Meter. Heute kann man fast auf 2000 Meter Wein anbauen durch diese Recherche der Universität. Ich glaube schon, dass die Universität sich Gedanken gemacht hat, wie können wir in Zukunft auch Weinbau machen, trotz Trockenheit. Sicherlich, die Zukunft ist nicht rosig, das weiß jeder Weinbauer. Es gibt Wein noch und nöcher, die Keller sind überall voll, außer meinen. Ich lebe in einer glücklichen Situation. Wir haben fast 30% mehr gemacht als das Jahr davor. Und das ist schon mal viel für einen kleinen Winzer wie ich. Aber ich bin von zu Hause aus positiv. Die Weinbau, wenn überhaupt existieren soll und soll nach Qualität arbeiten, nur Qualität oder Masse dazwischen wird ausgehen, die zwischen wie sagen wir, Produktion. Top oder Masse. Und ich bin der Meinung, dass viele junge Winzer heute schon dabei sind, um das nachzugehen. Und ja, der Optimismus ist da. Die Pandemie wird früher oder später ausgehen. Ihr weißt ja, ich kann mich erinnern mit meinen paar Jahren, wir waren in der Welt 1,7 Milliarden Menschen. Heute sind wir 7 Milliarden, trotz Cholera, Pest und alles Mögliche. Uns Menschen macht keine kaputt. Und deswegen, wir schaffen das schon. Wir kriegen das auch schon hin.
Wonderful words, Luigi. Thank you very much. We will translate that afterwards. I'm coming back to a question to Edmund Diesler. We know Germany as a worldwide quality producer with especially for white wines right at the moment, but they are also starting to do very, very high quality red wines in the last 20 years. So let me ask you something. What do you think about challenges in the niche areas of wine, especially for a country who is producing, who is also serving other big countries? What are you thinking about niche areas of wine? I think about hard seltzers or natural wine.
Oh, difficult question. Niche wines. I don't know if they receive a broad broad demand. But we need niche wines, or we can produce niche wines for special consumers, for special customers, but niche wines are have also in the future a niche, not a broad community or broad consumption.
Okay.
We need this because is a part of our tremendous varieties that we have in the wine sector. But it's all.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going directly further on to Martin from the Czech Republic, because it's going a little bit in the same direction. I've been traveling a lot in the last 2 years, even during pandemic, despite the pandemic, and I've noticed in the big European cities like London or Berlin that the Czech grape growers has a strong position in orange wine, and I was very, very surprised about that. Has that been influenced throughout the pandemic, or is it a strategic development, or more something in a coincidence?
I'm surprised also. Thank you for your second question to me, Martin. No, seriously. I think you spoke about natural or authentic wines, but it's not a strategy. We don't have an export strategy now in this time, because as you can know, we produced 30% of what we consume. So in this time we don't have export strategy, but we are on the beginning. We think about it, but I don't think so that it will be the orange wines. I talk about it in my presentation. I think it will be the varieties Welsh Riesling and Palava, our own variety. I think so personally, because it's very typical wines in our colored country, and we work in this time on, let's say, some renown, and the target for me is to bring the people to Czech Republic to visit our country. We want to introduce our country and our wine to Europe, to world. Let's say, are a very good alternative, because we are not a typical producers country. So we want to work that our wine will be in the world a good and nice alternative.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin.
You're welcome.
Coming back to a question who came over the YouTube chat, there was Viticulture has put a question. I will go throughout all the countries afterwards, and so you have a little bit time to think about. So the question was in English. My question is, how did the governments of each country responded towards the challenges that the winemakers had during the pandemic times, and what was the support offered? Thank you very much, Konstantin, for your question. Just I give you a brief German translation on it. So die Frage war, wie wurdet ihr in den Ländern politisch oder finanziell unterstützt in den einzelnen Ländern? Was hat die Regierung offeriert? Ich beginne gerade mal mit der Schweiz, dann haben meine Kollegen noch ein bisschen Zeit, sich da kurz zu überlegen. Ich habe es ganz kurz angetönt. I will start with that. So first of all, we had a certain oversupply into the market, especially in the French part of Switzerland. The government has been decided an additional help to the promotion of 10 million Swiss francs, a unique offer for 10 million Swiss francs, and we put away around 7.5 million liters from the market. Otherwise, there was this hardship package, which offers you, if you are losing more than 40% of the turnover, then you are losing, you get a certain cashback from the government for free. So you get the money out of that and you don't have to repay it, by the way. So that are the two things. But on the other hand, that was more for the wine importers and wine merchants, because the producers never lost 40% of their turnover. So, also in der Schweiz gab es zwei Sachen. Wir haben 10 Millionen Schweizer Franken bekommen, um 7,5 Millionen Liter Wein vom Schweizer Weinmarkt zu nehmen. Das war eine Geschichte, und die andere Geschichte war, wenn jemand ein sogenanntes Härtefallpaket bekommt, das heißt, er musste nachweisen, dass er in den letzten 2 Jahren im Durchschnitt mehr als 40% des Umsatzes verloren hat, dann hat er je nach Kanton zwischen 15 bis 20% eines Jahresumsatzes vom Staat bezahlt bekommen. Das gab es praktisch keine Weinbaubetriebe, aber es gab ein paar Importeure, die haben das natürlich verloren, weil sie sehr stark fokussiert auf die Gastronomie waren. Ich erlaube mir jetzt kurz bei euch durchzugehen und hier noch, das als letzte Frage deklariert ist, erlaube ich mir zuerst Luigi anzufragen, was waren die Hilfen in Italien?
Ja, ich kenne einige Kollegen von uns, die ein bisschen was gekriegt haben. Keine große 15.000, 20.000 wie in der Schweiz oder 15, 20% in der Schweiz. Ein bisschen haben die bekommen. Also ich habe nichts bekommen, weil ich habe vorhin gesagt, wir haben 30% Zuwachs gehabt und habe ich nichts bekommen. Aber von Hörensagen, die Kollegen haben schon ein paar Groschen bekommen, Hilfe von der Stadt. Du hast eben gesagt, dass die Gastronomie, die Hotellerie zu waren, und das ist natürlich auch ein Verlust für die gewesen, die konnten nicht verkaufen, es sei denn an Privatleute oder an Supermarkt. Aber die Leute, die ich kenne, die sind alle kleine Winzer, die haben mit Supermarkt nichts zu tun oder wenig zu tun. Die meisten sind alle Gastronomie oder Privatverkauf. Und deswegen haben die Verluste schon gehabt und ein paar Groschen von italienischer Staat bekommen.
Good, thank you very much, Luigi. We are changing into the English language. Probably Karl Diewald from Austria. You have can you give us please some of what has been happened on the political side in Austria? You have to put the red flag away, otherwise we will not hear you. Yep.
Also da hat sich die österreichische und die schweizerische Regierung scheinbar zusammengeschlossen. Wir haben ganz genau das gleiche Programm wie ihr. Und wir haben auch Weinbude vom Markt genommen und zu Desinfektionsmittel verarbeitet. Und das andere genauso mit diesen 40% über die 12 Monate. Ich habe davon nichts bekommen. Also haarscharf daneben, darunter gelegen. Aber gleiches System wie die Schweiz in Österreich.
Besten Dank. Thank you very much, Karl. Probably Edmund Diesler.
We didn't have a special support for wine growers in Germany. We have a general support for the industry, for the production, but not especially for wine growers.
Thank you very much. And Martin Chlad from the Czech Republic.
Let's say it was the same like in Germany. Generally, there was a support for the employers which stay at home, but also the Ministry of Agriculture, when some subjects put the degrees with your business, with your sales, they became some compensation.
Okay, thank you very much. Hopefully, Konstantin, you're ready and you're happy with the answer. So now I will hand over in a few seconds to Robert Leonhardt for the end of the Congress. It was an experience for us, for all of us, I think. I'm very happy that we have been achieved the goal for the for the first time. And thank you very much to all our listeners. Thank you very much for all the speakers, at least. Wish you a good weekend, at least from my side. And I hand over to Robert.
Thank you very much for your attention. I hope we are able to offer you an insightful conference. Thank you very much to all speakers, participants, and co-organizers, especially Woody T. Herner. See you at the next conference during the European Football Championship Vino Euro Czech Republic in May 2022. Until then, stay healthy and cheerful. Bye.